Hey there, welcome back. Today we are talking about this book, Dynasty by Tom Holland, The Rise and Fall of the House of Caesar. Now, if you're like me, you're a fan of history, but just a casual fan. I'm not one really to dive too far into people and dates and what exactly was going on back in the day. I'm just more in for it for like some interesting information and the entertainment of the stories. So when I jumped into this book, I thought, okay, I really don't know anything, well, pretty much nothing, about Julius Caesar and his descendants. So I picked this up, and let me just explain where it goes. It starts with Caesar being around, but he actually dies or is killed before page 30, which is kind of surprising to me. I was kind of hoping to get more about Caesar and his rise to power, but it really takes off with his successor, Augustus. So Caesar dies really quick. You get maybe 170 pages with Augustus, and this is why I really want to read more about Caesar, because according to this book, it seems like Augustus is really the one who builds up Rome and builds up the name of the House of Caesar. So it goes to Augustus, and then Tiberius, Claudius, or is it a Tiberius, Caligula, Claudius, and it ends with Nero. Again, stuff I had no idea about before reading this. All I knew you heard the name Caligula, and you think about like womanizing and drinking and maybe doing some crazy stuff. And then of course Nero, we all heard that Nero fiddled as Rome burned. So those two guys are what I really was interested. But it was interesting to get a lot of time with Augustus and see what he did to really build up Rome. And this book is kind of a story, I think a lot of stories in history, where the first guys, the first generations, Julius Caesar, Augustus, and Tiberius, they're traditionalists. They're the ones who really stick with the values of Rome and what it means to be Roman, and they build not only the city up, but themselves, their own reputation about how the plebs should view them and how the Senate should view them. And basically having respect, I think, respect for what it means to be Roman and the office they're holding. Whereas then you start getting down to Caligula and Nero, and you're getting into young kids inheriting things. I think Nero came to power when he was only 17. Now you imagine a 17-year-old being given all this power. And at first, he's kind of doing things all right. But then by the time he's 18, 19, and you start figuring out, hey, I can do anything I want. Nobody's going to stop me. And that leads to some crazy. Caligula's the same way. Caligula was a little better, I think, than Nero, because at least Caligula, he went on for a while pretending to be like, oh, I'm a man of Rome, and letting the Senate think they have power and all that kind of stuff, and then being like, you know what, screw it, it's me, nobody else matters, you're following me. So this book, it's very interesting how not only the landscape changes for the leadership, their kind of role, but also Rome as well. We get a lot of stories too. There's sometimes he diverts from focusing just on, I'd say, the main cast of characters, the Caesars. It talks about, religion, slavery, what it means to be a slave, how you can become freed, and what freedmen can do afterwards. Talks a little bit about immigration, their worries about the Roman Empire getting so big, and then all these people from all over the world coming into Rome with their different cultures and different standards, and how they view the world works, or how it should work. So that stuff's kind of interesting. Sometimes it gets a bit long, and you're just like, all right, can we get back to Nero? Can we get back to Caligula? All right, this is interesting. That's just me. Like I said, I'm very much about the story and entertainment and all that daily life kind of stuff. Just give me tidbits of it, and that's good enough for me. So I'd say there's not a lot of that, the sidetracking, but there's a decent amount to give you a better overall view of how the city is working, how the whole empire is working. We get some forays up into Britain, into Germany, and so those are very interesting. Sometimes you get a few battle scenes, not too many, but a few battle scenes about, especially when they went walking up into the marshes and hills in Germany. That was pretty interesting. So overall, I gotta say, I'm glad I read this. Disappointed that it didn't have more about Julius Caesar, but I guess that's on me to research the book more before I started it. So it does make me want to go back and read more about him. I'd say also I was hoping, I don't know what I was hoping for with more with Caligula and Nero, right? Those are the two kind of what's the word I'm thinking of? Fiery personalities, the ones that really stand out is oh, they've got some stories to tell. And so there are, being that this is 2,000 years ago, you kind of wish there was more detail, especially the part about Nero and fiddling while Rome burned. It's like the fire happened, and how he does it, the fire happens, they go through it, and then it's later when you kind of get an account or some accounts of him actually seeming not to care that the city was on fire, and that even leads to some suspicion that it was him who started the fire, that he was supposedly up on the roof fiddling to. So there's a lot of stuff, and I like when these authors, they tell you, listen, we have this source for this story. They're not necessarily trustworthy, or this is kind of the side they're on. So I like that, he gives you these moments and stories, but he's like, we have to take this with a grain of salt. Or maybe these popular stories you've heard about these people may not have gone down the way you think. So I do appreciate that. I like I said, I wish there was more with Caligula and Nero, but it is what it is. It's a very good introduction, I think, to this time period and this family. It gets very convoluted, though, with the family and how everybody is related to each other, because there's adoptions, marriages, divorces, being married into other families, and then as soon as somebody has a baby, you have to divorce them and then marry this person, and then 2 generations later, the grandson or granddaughter of that baby is now in the scene. So it gets a bit complex, and honestly, I think after the first couple of generations, I stopped trying to keep track of it. I'm just like, I don't know who's anymore, especially when people are being adopted and remarried constantly. So yeah, that was tough to go about, but I just pushed it out of my head and like, all right, we're just gonna take it for what it is. But there's a lot, modern day stories, they have to get a lot from history. And that's why I love reading history, because you get all this political intrigue, this backstabbing, this, exiling of family members. And then, oh no, you can come back. There's a different ruler now. And then they make that ruler mad. It's like, you're back to exile. Letting family members starve or just killing them outright, poisoning them. It's craziness. It's craziness. And how some of these people meet their end is entertaining. That's all I can say. Caligula, whew, what a crazy dude. Nero, I gotta say Caligula was probably crazier than Nero. Yeah, but both of them are just spoiled little kids with too big of a stick to wield around with no repercussions. So, I don't want to spoil anything, even though it's 2,000-year-old history. If you want to read about it, if you know nothing about these people like I did, then definitely pick this up. You'll learn a lot, and you'll be entertained for sure. So I have another book of Mr. Holland's, The Rubicon, and that talks about the whole rise and fall of the Roman Empire. Trying to decide if I want to stick with that, stay in that mindset, or if I want to go and do something a little more light and fun in a fiction genre. So we'll see. Anywho, please comment down below. Let me know what you think, not only about this book, but if there are other books on this topic that you think might be good for me, then please definitely give me your recommendations. Like and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Stay tuned for more, and I will see you later.